afternoon, and welcome back to the third annual Heroes Journey Symposium. I'm Colonel Mary Lo Mayhew, President and founder of the John P. Mayhew Foundation. We're proud to recognize this afternoon our Legislator of the Year, Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester, who represents Delaware in the U.S. House of Representatives and serves as the Assistant Whip for House Leadership. That committee has broad jurisdiction that she is on over healthcare, the environment, commerce, trade, energy policy, telecommunications, manufacturing, and consumer protections. Lisa understands from a healthcare member of different perspectives as an implementer of the Delaware Department of Health and Social Services negotiator while serving as state personnel director and advocate as CEO of the Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League. Lisa is focused on reducing the cost of health care and prescription drugs for our families and addressing disparity outcomes for communities of color. She serves as a member of the bipartisan Heroin Task Force, comprised of more than 100 members united in the common goal of tackling the opioid addiction. Ladies and gentlemen, Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester, our Legislator of the Year.
Thank you so much, Mary, for that introduction. It is truly an honor to join all of you, even virtually. I want to thank the JPM Foundation for this incredible honor and for the work that you are doing on behalf of our veterans. Like I said, it is truly an honor to be recognized as the Legislator of the Year by the John P. Mayhew Foundation. Having served in the health community at the state level and as a member of Congress now, I have a deep appreciation of the importance of mental health, particularly for our returning heroes. I've heard firsthand from veterans right here in Delaware about the importance of having mental health services readily available when they return home. We know that the wounds of war are mental as well as physical, and it's our obligation to ensure that all of those wounds are cared for. That's why in July, I introduced the VA Clinical Team Culture Act. The goal of this bill is simple. Let's follow the evidence, create military culturally competent treatment, and bring the best providers available into the fold, and give our heroes the best possible mental health treatment. Just a few months ago, the Veterans Affairs Committee held an important hearing on my bill, and I'm hopeful that we can continue advocating and advancing this important piece of legislation. When we send our incredible men and women of our military into harm's way, it is our solemn goal and obligation to make sure that they have the resources and the care that they need when they return home. And it's our obligation to ensure that that care is the best that our country has to offer. It's the least that we can do for those who have put their lives on the line for all of us. So again, I am humbled to be recognized by the John P. Mayhew Foundation as the Legislator of the Year. And I will continue to do the hard work with you for those who are serving us and our country. Thank you so much.
My name is Alex Walclair, and I am here to introduce the next panel, The Healing Arts and the Art of Healing. I am very honored to be here today. A little about myself. I met John Mayhew a few months before he passed away. We were both in recovery together, and he struggled, but he was always a light, and he always showed up, and it was a terrible loss when we lost him. I have personally been sober for 5 years, and a big part of my recovery is yoga and other forms of alternative healing. So I'm very honored to be introducing this panel. First, I would like to introduce Alexis Hartwick. She is the Director of Education and Administration at the Keegan Theater, as well as the Curriculum Director for Yoga Medco. Billie Krishawn is a theater and film actor from Washington, D.C. She is a graduate of the Duke Ellington School of the Arts and Drew University. She has developed deeper into her visual arts work with a focus on protecting women of color. Amy Yamashiro. In 2015, Amy trained to become a Reiki level 1 and 2 practitioner and a Reiki master to provide daily distance practice to her then traditional Chinese medicine. Our moderator today is Dr. Susie Health. Dr. Susie Carmack is an award-winning communication and well-being. Thank you so much, and I will give you the panel.
Thank you. For me to be able to be heard today, I'm going to keep my mask nearby, and I want to, as an assistant professor of public health, global and community health at George Mason University,
I want to keep advocating for mask wearing, so please forgive me as I do my best to honor that protocol. I want to first start by thanking you
for that introduction, thanking the Mayhew Foundation for having me, and thank specifically Colonel Mayhew for her incredible work to advocate to a national conversation regarding brain health. This panel is specifically looking at the importance of healing arts for brain health, and in a way we are looking at that healing arts from multiple points of view. It is almost a disservice to introduce the healing arts to those of you who are new to them by trying to get it in an hour. But luckily, I am surrounded by some incredible colleagues that are going to give you some unique lenses that they bring forward that hopefully will help you see there is so much more to this story of the healing arts. Specifically, we're going to be looking at how the healing arts are not just a practice to receive, although we'll learn from Amy that being the recipient as well as the practitioner of the healing arts can be quite powerful in how we make sense of our life journey as well as our health and the way we live our lives. It can also be a way that we improvise our lives, as we will hear more from Alexis Hartwick and the incredible work she does with youth at the Keegan Theater, as well as with other advocacy work with creative arts. How can we be more creative in the ways we live our lives, especially during these unprecedented times? And we'll also hear about how we can all raise our voice in our communities, among other things, with the amazing artwork being done by Billie and the great work she does on behalf of communities of color and all of the work that she's doing specifically to support the homeless. Her work shows us by her very example that we can all lean in and do more than we thought we could and be creative about that process. So I just want to thank them for being here and to give you a bit of a taste of where this conversation will go. But please know that as someone who studies the intersections of communication and well-being, there is much more for us to be talking about. And I hope that this entire day, as well as this specific conversation, inspires you to keep these conversations going. So with that, I wanted to first start, we'll be looking at these different dimensions of the healing arts. How can we be learning more about them if we're curious about them for healing in our own lives? How can we also learn that we can be our own healer in a way by practicing the healing arts, but also how can we recognize and honor that there is a science behind these healing arts, and there is actually a fair amount of rigor and training that is involved to get to the credential of being a practitioner, as we will learn from Amy, and also through my own work as a yoga teacher trainer for the last decade. So, but for now, let's go ahead and get started with some fun questions. This will be a rolling discussion, and I have some talking points because we have so much to say, but I hope that my panel will help me to keep on track and give them the voices that I can't wait for you all to hear. So let's start with an interesting question that I hear a lot in the many places I find myself as a well-being promotion scholar, and that is, what would you tell someone who is skeptical about the healing arts as part of a treatment plan for brain health? And as a footnote to that question, we know that we've learned in the last panel the importance of how the science is really catching up to what we've known for centuries, and that is that the arts can help us to heal our life story. But still, there seems to be some stigma and some efforts to not perhaps understand fully the full scope of what is possible, or to perhaps think of it as just anecdotal evidence when in fact the science could tell us otherwise. So I asked my panel, starting with my colleague and friend, full disclosure, Alexis Hartwick, we're all friends now, some newer than others, but what would you say to that person that had that skepticism about what the healing arts are all about? What would you say?
I would say that everyone is an artist, and I think when we first come to terms with the fact that we all can be creative beings, that it's a really easy way to start exploring our own stories and to share those out into the community. I'd like to share with you some rules of improvisation. The first being yes and. So I think anyone that is going through a healing process first acknowledges that there is a process to begin, just like the creative process, and then we begin it. We think about trusting our intuition, as well as being present in our healing moments, listening and responding to our community, and that there are no wrong answers in the art process. There's just making big, bold, beautiful choices that are your own. And then the idea that we are all part of a larger community, and so theater gives us that opportunity to explore that, and really any form of arts lets us know that we're not alone on this journey, and that there is a whole safe network that is there to support us.
Thank you. I love that idea of starting with the process of identifying that we're in that space, and in that space of acceptance and being open. We learned in our last session the importance of instilling hope and sharing hope. This is one unique way we can go about that. Billie, I was wondering if you could also expand on that question, perhaps from your lens as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the beautiful things is that there's already an awareness of the importance of modern medicine. It's proven, it's shown, it's the thing that we all engage in on a regular basis. However, on top of that beautiful thing, there's also a way that we can be accountable and have agency over our own healing. Because the one tool we have all of the time, regardless of insurance, regardless of accessibility, is ourselves. And one thing that is always accessible is the fact that we're thinking all the time, so many thoughts, constantly. What we don't realize is that while we can't track all of the thoughts that we have, our feelings hint us off to the thoughts that we're having. And we can already, just by the slightest thing of taking notice of our feelings, adjust that way. So if I begin to feel sad thoughts just by taking awareness of it, taking notice of it, then begin to do anything that aligns with feeling better. If I like flowers, as soon as I feel a sad thought, I can instantly engage with that. If I like a song, sometimes we have like trigger songs that instantly make us feel good. For a while, Pharrell's Happy, you all know it, was the automatic trigger song. So having that in your back pocket is ways to automatically allow you to feel better. And the skepticism that comes along with these alternative healings can automatically be waived if we think about the fact that we're trusting ourselves to do this work. It's not saying to not engage with the other options, but to say that we also have the option of healing ourselves through positive thinking, through things that already make us feel good, being aware of the things that we put inside of our bodies and the beings that we are around. So if you are feeling skepticism for these alternate healing options, to realize that, well, really it starts with you. So considering you've been existing inside of you already, I think there's a lot of trust because you've already done the work to get you where you are now. So to engage in more work to help you feel better is not so much to be skeptical about.
Beautiful answer, and I love that perspective that we start within and to not be skeptical with ourselves as we look at these solutions, and also that we can integrate that with other options as they are needed as well. So thank you for that so much. I'm wondering if, Amy, you have some other thoughts. I know a lot of the work that you've done in various ways, multiple dynamics, and she is not only a Reiki practitioner, but also does work with Tao healing, and also has quite a background in education. So there's lots of great stories to be told about Amy's background, but I know some of the work you're doing is with regards to the arts and agency as well. So wondering if you have any thoughts with regards to that skepticism, and we'll call it that.
Yes, I'd like to first start with the fact that I am more of a logical thinker, and my work during my day job is with statistics and evidence-based research. And so this opportunity from the Mayhew Foundation I wish I had known about this earlier, because my father would have benefited so greatly. He was on the front lines in the military intelligence and in the Korean War, and he came back with lots of trauma, and he would self-medicate himself. And had I been open earlier in my life to this healing art, to see that when we can look in and accept all of us, warts and all, flaws, the pain, that when we can see the beauty in life, that the other side of the panel is speaking of so greatly, that when we feel broken, we feel cut off, and we feel like we have to put up the walls so people don't see the pain and the hurt that's within us. We feel we have to hide, but when we can see that we're whole, perfect, just the way we are, and others who love us so dearly want to just reach out and give every ounce of love to us, that's the beauty of being able to see the whole person, and that the brain health is so critical because our mindset has to see the world a certain way. And when we're open, just shifting that view to see it as beautiful instead of broken, to be able to have others reach out and give us the healing we need, whatever it is, that all of us, we want people to be well and have wellness be part of our life, not just something we do when we're feeling ill. And so with lots of agency and being able to be present to whatever it is that we love, that beauty in life that can inspire us to take this down to wellness or to maintain our wellness, that's what's so critical. And I'm just so blessed that we have this panel to share and have people be present to the beauty of life.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a powerful story. So I thank you. And I know that, as I mentioned, this is happening in real time, right? And I think there's so much power in what you said, in so many ways to respond, that it brings me almost to speechlessness. But I wanted to underscore this idea. I think another piece that's hopefully embedded within our conversation today, and that was just expressed beautifully, is that those of us who are in the healing arts as practitioners, we are healing ourselves as well. And so I can tell you, one of the things I write about in my first book, Wellbeing Ultimatum, is how I got to a place where I was training yoga teachers internationally, and I realized when I was doing some research on burnout that I had it, right? And just so you know, just because we might be experts at stress management, it does not mean that we don't have our own stresses. And in fact, those of us who are in the space of wellness promotion, healthcare promotion, we're all in the same healing promotion space together, that we ourselves, even as we prepare ourselves to bear witness when we are in the role of being healer, that we show up as fully as we can to hold space for someone else, whether you're in conventional medicine or alternative or something in between. Even holding space in a meeting while someone shares something you did not expect, right? That even though we can be in that space of being healers, that does not mean that we don't have our own healing. And this is something that part of my work is trying to bring forward, is this idea that, yes, we can continue our own work in progress life as we prepare ourselves to hold space for others. And that we've actually got to address that stigma too. We have our work cut out for us. It's an unfortunate truth that even before COVID-19 came about, that physician suicide was higher than military suicide prevalence. I don't like sharing that statistic with you, but as a population health specialist, I see that statistic, and it makes me uncomfortable, as I'm sure it's making you uncomfortable to hear. There's stories of challenges with regards to a lot of the healing arts in education, healthcare, the people who are out there serving us in multiple ways, the legal fields. I could go on. And I only bring that forward because those of us who, again, are trained and highly committed in these high consequence fields to be of service to others, it's important that we show up as fully as we can, as I know Amy does, and that we're willing to be vulnerable too about our story. So thank you for letting me expand on that. And let's all be willing to share that too. It does not compromise our ability to be of healing service to someone else if we choose to share pieces of our story. I think if anything, it helps folks to know that we get to these places of training and practicing only because we have a personal connection with the material. So I hope that, again, we'll see where we go next, but I just appreciate the chance to share that. Thank you. What I wanted to go to next, I'll go to Billie first this time, is how we all can become healers in our own way. And this idea of whether or not we, hang that title of healer or practitioner on ourselves, how can we become that healing change agents, perhaps? Billie?
Yeah. So I think the first thing, it always goes back to this, is going within, right? Right now we're in a bit of a movement where we're experiencing a push for justice, a push for change, a push for things to be different and to hold people accountable so that everyone can exist with equality and equity. And in the beginning of the movement, because we were in the midst of quarantine, a lot of people felt guilt for not being able to get out on the streets. But for me, it was reminding people that, well, do what you can, because one, any step is a step towards change. And two, all of the steps combined are what make a whole picture. So I think when it comes to figuring out ways where we can be healers ourselves, for ourselves and our community, is meeting us where we are. So for instance, we all know the healers. Our grandmothers often are healers because they cook for us all the time and ask us to take home a plate. We have the healers who are always offering books. So thinking about the points that you feel good. I feel good communicating with children on the things that they can do when they get older, right? That makes me feel good. So how can you access that in the community? I think it's about thinking of the things that you enjoy, that make you feel whole, and offering that in the ways that you can. And I think I saw an instance of this of when I decided to shift gears when people were sending in donations to support what was going on, to shift gears to get donations for the people without homes, the homeless community. And a lot of the donations that I was getting were things that people had already. I guess some people tend to stock the things when they visit hotels. So I would get a lot of hotel donations, the small soaps, the small toothpastes. And even though for us it's just an additional thing that we happen to take when we're at a hotel, for others that makes a whole difference. That means that they have toothbrush and toothpaste for however long that lasts, and that makes a difference. It doesn't have to be a big step, but just taking any step that we know that we can. If you don't feel comfortable giving money to the homeless community, that's fine. If you know you have an umbrella at home and it's not raining that day and you have one in your back seat, that is within reach. So I think becoming a healer is as simple as seeing what we have to offer already, because we all have something to offer. That's why we're here. We all have something that makes the world a little bit better. So to share that with somebody can come back twofold to ourselves and our community, because once our community is whole, we are whole by default.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you so much. Alexis, I was wondering if you'd like to go from there as well on the question about how we can become healers in our own way.
I think, when I was first asked to speak on this panel, I was surprised because I don't always associate myself as a healer. And I had to step back and I had to think about why Susie would invite me to speak on this panel. And I think when I think of my own narrative and the way that both the creative process and yoga and mindfulness have helped me to overcome so many struggles in my own life, that I realized if I could heal myself, then I could heal others. And a lot of that just comes from being present. It comes from giving a sense of hope. It comes from helping people to find their purpose. And so as an educator and as someone in the community, it really means a lot to me to sit, and I know Billie has shared these stories of listening to people within her community about what they need, and that's truly where the healing process begins, to help people to unfold their own stories and to hold space for others. And for me, it was also the creative process, the part of being within a theater community and to have a production to do and to have a group to do it together was so important. And so I think whatever that purpose is for you, whether that might be in the arts or whether that might be even sports, to find that thing that gives you purpose and joy. And I think we can all be healers in that, and it can't be done alone. I think coming back to this idea of creating and finding those support networks, both the ones that make sense to us, like doctors, but as well as community, friendships. I think all of that is so important.
Thank you so much. I actually have a follow-up question that you don't see me coming, but here I go anyway, so thank you. So, speaking to what you were saying about the theater community and, you know, in a pre-COVID world, theater productions were in one way and now we're doing them differently for now. We hope it's temporary. We also know that you're doing a lot of work with children in youth training, theater training, both, you know, formal and informal, after school type of work. And so, you know, we've got families today that are really struggling with so much caused by the ripple effects that we're experiencing and how we're engaging differently. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little to any kind of either ahas or lessons learning along the way about how you're maintaining that community even though the dynamic has had to change for you.
When I received my master's degree, my focus was on socio-emotional learning, and that was something that we weren't talking about at the time, and it's been 10 years that we actually are really not talking about what that means. It's now taking on a different meaning. It's about re-socializing, and it's about connecting to our feelings. But the original idea of socio-emotional learning is that we create a social and emotional supportive network for children to learn, and that they learn by teaching each other. And when we're in isolation, it can be really easy to forget how important that piece is. And I think if families can focus now on how we can create social interactions for our children, as well as how we can create joy and reigniting their curiosity, the whole process is going to be easier. Because right now I think we're trying to fit children into a system that may not necessarily be the right fit because we're not really sure what to do. And so sometimes it's important to step back, to check in on their emotional well-being and helping them to reconnect with how they're feeling so that they are happier, they're feeling less stressed. Even if they don't know how to articulate those words, that's what's happening. And we know from the brain science that if we're not happy, we're not going to be able to absorb new information.
Thank you. That's so, I think that's really powerful suggestions for families. I know, our hearts go out to folks that are adjusting to the technology changes. We all are in our own way in our work and in our schoolwork and many times at the same time within the same household, challenging bandwidth beyond expectation, all of that. But to also, in addition to trying to get the technology right, to also see how our own technology is doing, our head and our hearts. So thank you, so powerful. Amy, I want to bring it back to you as well. Do you have any other additional thoughts about this question about how we can become healers in our own way?
Yes, so for myself, when I had my first experience of having a blessing, and I could remember I was totally stressed out at work, and one of my friends said, call this healer. And I did. I had the sort of Devil's Wear Prada type of boss. I was like, everything now. And usually I can manage everything, but the stress level was just over the top. And my blood pressure, I could really feel it was raising. And I had actually gone to the hospital one time because I was worried that I actually had maybe a coronary attack. And
So I did. And when you have that experience of, like, you are just ready to burst and having the calmness just come through your whole body, so that, like, when you're blissed out, I mean, it was just sort of like, move from one moment to the next, so I could go out of that, like, little office that I was hiding in to take the call, and to be able to carry on and have that strength, the calmness, the centeredness. In an instant, I was like, I want to be able to learn how to do something like that. And so my first path was to do Reiki. As mentioned, when my mother, who lives in California, and uncle were both very ill, I felt I needed to learn to do something for them. And so it really takes practice. And so whatever wellness practice you do, you know you want to be doing it diligently and that you can bring it forth. And so I was becoming well, but there was this one area that was still persistent. And it was because when I was 5, my mother was suddenly taken to the hospital and nearly died, and has always been very ill ever since from an immune disease. And then when I was 11, well, during that time, my sister had been going in and out of the hospital, and she had lupus, and it was affecting her like leukemia. And so she actually died when I was 11, and my mother said, don't tell anyone, because no one will understand you if you talk about death at your age. And so I just held that in, and I tried many different things, and this is the end, because if you're curious, you're willing to try something else. And I had learned about a study to use the Tao calligraphy healed, and it really is very simple. There's multiple things. You're doing the breathing, you're involving the meditation, you're using creative visualization for your wellness. You want to have your hands over the parts affected, and you want to have an affirmation. And so I was like, okay, I'm willing to try this. And so I went in, the practitioner asked me what my condition was, and he realized it was more than the grief and sadness, that there was a lot of other like issues with pent-up emotions, the anger and upset at the loss, a lot of worry. And that I wasn't even present to the fact that every night I would wake up in a cold sweat, gasping for air, my heart racing because I had night terrors. Every single night. I just thought this was normal. Didn't everyone have night terrors every night? You wake up, scared to death. And so after receiving the blessings, I was given a card like this. I was taught to chase and chant and just become calm, because with the calm, the peacefulness, we can let our bodies heal it ourselves. That I can tell you, that night was the first night I slept through the night and actually woke up happy the next morning. I mean, just to know what that felt like. It's like, all the homework, if you want me to trace and chant 90 minutes a day or whatever, I will do it. To be able to have a full night's sleep without waking up every night and just not wanting to go to sleep again because I'm just in terror. That being able to realize that we have the power to heal ourselves. Whatever it is that works for you, and the combination of your regular therapies and treatment, definitely continue whatever you're doing with your doctors, but whatever you can do to nourish yourself, to center yourself, to give yourself the peace of mind, that's where I felt this was definitely worth it for me, and I'm training to also learn to use
these techniques as a doll practitioner so that whatever it is that can work for people, you know, I'm with everyone here. We want to make sure that the community is empowered. Each person is empowered to heal yourself so that we can heal the community together.
Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you. And I think, again, I hope that as we're sharing these narratives, it's coming through that there is power in sharing these narratives. There is power in coming to a place of saying, you know what, this is a very difficult thing that I'm dealing with. Waking up in the middle of the night, having unexplained physical reactions, the mind-body connection. Sometimes our bodies have a lot to say to us, and they do hold our story. I wanted to interject here in a way some of my own work. I know in panel role, facilitator, I'm not really a member per se, but I do feel the need to kind of change hats for a moment and pile on in a good way to the conversation so far. A lot of my research actually in health communication looks at the role of something called sense making. And it's just like it sounds, how we make sense of things. How do we make sense of our life story? It started in the literature with several scholars looking at the very simple act that maybe you can identify with. Remember way back when you were in school and you were writing a paper and you started to research it, and maybe you were lucky enough to find a topic that you were really curious about, and you went off on all these rabbit trails running after information, and maybe you got lost and you suddenly realized, oh no, this paper is due tomorrow. How do I put it all together and make sense and stay on point and on topic to the assignment? Well, that moment that you pulled it all together and decided what was relevant and what story you wanted to tell in a compelling way and how you wanted to move the story forward, adding on your own spin, your own perspective, but still grounding it in the story that you had seen so far. That's what sense making is. And we do that as individuals, we do that as organizations, it goes into everything, into branding, etc. But it especially is compelling from a narrative medicine perspective. How are we making sense of the stories that we're going under when we have health-based hard times, when we have challenges and hiccups to our life path that we did not see coming? And how do we get ourselves up physically, mentally, figuratively, literally, and decide not just that we're going to keep going, but that we're going to go somewhere? We do know in the health communication literature that when people can make sense of their story and they shift from feeling as though a story has been thrust upon them by life events, whether it's a health-related or relationship-based thing, or that they've simply found themselves through their own choice-making in a position they no longer want to be in, that there's a moment there where we shift from the storytelling of that happened to me, which I might call victim framing, with all respect to anyone who's been through adversity, to survivor framing, a shift of the story into where we're fighting the problem, we're going to get through it, we're going to choose to engage with it, to advocacy framing, to I want to go through this so that I can help others, to avoid the challenges I've been through, or to help them feel they're not alone as they go through that thing. Interestingly enough, the communication is the medicine there, because we know that patients who actually can make sense in that way and can become survivors and advocates have lower pain, they have better engagement and patient activation, and they're able to make sense of the story they're in, even though they didn't choose it to happen. So I share that because, again, part of this idea that we're all healing practitioners in our own way, with or without the formality of training. And oftentimes I've seen that many people come into healing arts training to be that yoga therapist or whatever it might be, because they're not only wanting to be of service, but they, yes, have their own challenges to be processing themselves. And I can say that is also true for my own journey. But that is a story for another day. Okay. Let's get us back to the conversation. I want to be mindful of the time. Okay, so our next discussion
is this idea of if someone was, let's say, curious. We've looked at the stigmas and challenges and hopefully opened up some aperture to the idea that healing practices may be an option for folks listening. And we've also seen that we can be doing some simple practices for ourselves to ground ourselves, that there's many education tools out there, and we're happy to share some of those actually when we conclude the panel in a little bit. But maybe it is time to reach out to a healing arts practitioner And what should we really be looking for is kind of what I'm curious about asking the panel for next. So, so if we were looking for a healer, I'll call it healer shopping, a little differently than I prepared on the notes, but I'm going to shift this into healer shopping. What would we be looking for? So I'm actually going to start with Amy, and just for time, we'll have kind of short reactions to the question, if that's okay.
Yes. So I think for each person, if you are willing to look into yourself, and you know and you can trust when you're responding well with someone, like there's the cognitive piece where we're like, oh, the credentials, but then your heart tells you something different, and you know this from when you meet people at any event. When you have that heart reaction to a healer, that speaks volumes. And trust your intuition. And you know, if you want to check up online afterwards, do your Google search, but definitely you can feel it. Even if it's virtually online, you get the sense, the power comes through.
That's really powerful to think of. So much of the healing arts is helping folks with that intuition, and that intuition can be part of that process of finding that practitioner.
Actually, if I could just add one more thing.
Sure.
That when you are willing to open your heart, now I'm not saying to just willy-nilly give your heart to everyone, but when you're willing to open your heart and trust your heart, and then you connect with your loved ones, you'll be open to receiving their love in a much more powerful way. And that's how we're going to be able to connect with people at that deeper level.
Thank you. That there's many frequencies of the conversation, right? Yes. So powerful. Thank you. Billie, I was wondering if you'd like to pick up from there. What would you say to someone shopping for a healer?
So I'm probably going to butcher this, but they say, give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. That's kind of close. And I'd say that that's what to look for. A healer, when realizing that is their intention or their purpose, a healer wants to heal. And a part of that healing process is giving the opportunity and the resources for people to heal themselves. Because if you have to rely on me for your healing, then that means that, you know, it takes away from how many people can be healed. But if I teach you how to heal yourself, you can pass that on to somebody else. So I think one important thing is when you find some outlet, whether it be a yoga teacher, whether it be a spiritual guide, whether it be, you know, a spiritual retreat, the thing to look for are the moments when they are trying to pass on the ways in which you can take that healing home. If somebody shows you a remedy and they say peppermint oil on your temples, that'll help relieve the ache, which it does for me. But if they show you, right, as opposed to doing it for you, that will that for me is a great sign that you're on the way to not only being healed, but that you have found some sort of healing connection because they're truly giving you access to the healing beyond them.
Beautiful, thank you. And that speaks to that participation piece of the process we've spoken about. Thank you so much. Alexis, any additional thoughts there?
No, because they're both so good. Yes, trust your instinct, and also I love the thought about that is so right, that like you know you've hit the right person when they're empowering you to be part of that process. The thing that I would add is it's shopping, and that you do have to keep trying, and you can't just trust it if you do a quick Google search or you call your insurance company that the first person you're matched with is going to be the right person, or that you say, go to a yoga class, that every single type of yoga is the same. So you do have to put in the work to keep trying things to find what works for you.
Thank you. That's very powerful as well. And so, just wanted to also pause and say that by now, as we've been really thinking about these different lenses of the healing arts, that we haven't really called out what they are exactly. And it's kind of interesting because it's like the sciences, there's so many. And so in the healing arts, we have the performing arts, as we have many experts here. We have the visual arts, and some of the Tao work is also visually based as an energy form, which is lovely as well. We have photo voice, which I know Billie has been doing a lot of work with photography as a way to express agency. So I was actually wondering, Billie, if I could ask you an unplanned follow-up question. How did you come into this space of the work with photography that you're doing? Maybe can you talk a little more about that visual piece?
Yeah, okay, so I've been acting for 13 years. So it's been what I've done. It's my career, it's my work. Of course, it's all I can do. But when the world shut down, a show that was supposed to be 3 shows in one got shut down as well. And then I was like, well, for the first month, I was like, it's going to clear in May, so I have time. And then after that month passed, I realized, okay, well, let me dig into the things that I enjoy. And I started to do even more visual artwork. And I realized, well, why not go to grad school to really learn the techniques for visual art? So I got a camera with the intentions of doing something to build my portfolio so that I could get a full ride. And then the movement started. And the first night I went out, it was the first night that I had been tear gassed or shot at with rubber bullets. And the next morning I realized, well, I wonder what the city looks like. I've never experienced the city in this way, and I wonder what it looks like now. So I went out with my camera, and I began to take pictures, which began, posting it on the Facebook, the social medias, and that began to get traction for those who couldn't be out, just to see where the city was. And so then I realized, okay, well, let me keep doing it. So I would go out every morning. At first it was around 9, but then I realized it would clean the city so quickly. So then I would go out around 6:30 a.m. to try to capture what was happening. Then it would be maybe, a few journalist people, the homeless community, and myself. And there was one particular time where I went out and I was shocked by what I had seen. There were barricades and these officers who were different than the people that I had seen the other days, and they wouldn't tell me who they were. And they were holding weapons I hadn't seen. And they were unloading on charter buses with these weapons that I hadn't seen. And then I took to the social medias to update them. I was very overwhelmed, saying, well, we're not violent, so what is happening? And I was seeing real time on the social medias, them helping me understand, okay, well, this weapon is this, and these people are this, and this is this. And then I kind of realized, well, this is it. I would have family members calling saying, be careful because the protesters are throwing fireworks. And I'd be like, wait, that's not happening. So I realized I could use my camera as a way to show our perspective, to capture what we were there for, because what you'd see were people, protesters handing out snacks with mom notes. You'd see people handing out free waters. You'd see, red tape that's meant to hint us off to who is medical aid. You see people handing out hand sanitizer and giving masks. And in a way, I wanted to share that side of us because, and I think it goes back to what you said, sharing our experiences. I grew up in a household where you keep your home business at home. But not only does it give you some relief, like Amy mentioned, but also you have no idea who's also carrying a similar story. And so I realized that using my camera and using my visual arts could be a way in to make people realize something they haven't. Because they may not listen to me, because I may not be somebody they recognize, but to see an image, to see a visual art piece where you can separate yourself from the person who's creating it can allow a way in to see another side and therefore start the cycle of healing.
Beautiful, thank you. And I appreciate that you allowed that moment of ambiguity for your own life and your work, and you chose to head into that space with that creative intention and the power of capturing your story and sharing it. So, I think that's incredibly powerful, and I think that's another piece to this idea of the healing arts specifically. We know that there is this power of deciding to share a story, to think about how we want to share it, and to do so in a way that what I'm hearing in your narrative is, and it's kind of calling to me the idea that it's not just about the showmanship, if I can use that term, of just sharing the story for the sake of sharing. There's an intentionality behind it. May this creative piece of work be ... a chance for someone else to feel they're not alone. May it be a way for me to say my story so that you know more about me that goes beyond words in some cases. Maybe the act of creating the art itself is a way to process the story that's happening in real time. And maybe other things too, and that's the great thing about the arts. A colleague of mine, I actually came up through the dance community, outing myself a little here, and one of my wonderful mentors, I was in a wonderful choreography piece, and dating myself, this was in the early 90s when dance concerts were just starting to experiment with the idea that we could do vocals on stage too. Yeah. So in any case, it was a great piece that I was in, and shout out to Shane O'Hara, who's actually in charge of the dance program at James Madison University now. And but anyway, I was in this piece, and he had me say this one quote: "It's art because you don't understand it. That's why it's art." Get it? And it was a very Dadaist piece, which I won't go into further, but that quote is calling to me now because there is a mystery as part of this process. And I think jumping into the chaos, jumping into the intentionality, and jumping in with that healer or servant's heart, knowing that word healer may or may not be comfortable for us, that idea of being a servant of others in a positive force for change kind of way. I think there are servant leaders that are healers and may not call themselves that. It's all about showing up fully and seeing where we go together. So as we head towards, as you can see, we've tried to give you a bit of a panorama of different ways to think about the healing arts, to realize they are across disciplines, visual, performing, written word, poetry. So many other ways that we can express ourselves through the healing arts that we haven't had the chance to do here. That we all are creative in our own way, and that we can apply that creativity into the intentionality of accepting our healing process as being a journey that's ongoing and that we're never done. That is an Eastern thought, that we don't race our human race to a finish line, but that we are all a work in progress. So as we head towards, I wanted to be sure that those of you watching, and thank you for that, and again, thanks to the Foundation for allowing us to be here, I wanted to ask each of the panelists to share what kind of tools that they have available to you in case we have piqued your curiosity about their work specifically. And we'll be also inviting you to stay in touch with us to see if we can also steward you to other artists that we didn't get a chance to bring up here today for our limited time. So if we could, we'll start with Alexis. If you could share a little more about how the work you're doing. There's several ways I think folks can engage with you.
So I work at the Keegan Theater, which is located right in DuPont Circle, and our mission is to produce work that explores the human condition and authentic storytelling. And I think one great way to start yourself in the process of being a healer and an artist is to participate as an audience member and to connect with other stories. And so I encourage you to check out some of the different stories that we've done, that we're going to continue to do in a post-COVID world. And in the meantime, through streaming experiences, to learn more about our education department. And we're going to continue to explore kind of the intersection between yoga and theater through creative well-being. So I hope you will check us out.
Awesome. And I know folks with families that are interested in their young folks, they have opportunities to be training with you all as well at Keegan.
Yes, we have virtual classes as well. So we definitely encourage you to check those out.
Thank you, Alexis.
Thank you.
Billie, would you like to share?
Yeah. And I'm really grateful for Keegan because Keegan was my first time seeing a play that I've written be up on stage for the first time. So Keegan is a beautiful place to interact with on so many different levels. Well, one, this isn't my resource, but a resource I'd like to share. It's been helpful for me, and when I got donations during the peak of the movement, I used this platform to set people up with therapists. There's a website called Open Path. It's available to anybody. It's so awesome. You can get sessions for as low as $35 to $60. It's super accessible. It's a one-time fee. Trust me, it's not a sham. And you can search by area, by topic, by so many different things. So Open Path is a great resource, and therapy therapy is a great resource. Sometimes it's just great to have somebody who is literally there to listen and be present. For me personally, I'm working on a series called the Socio series in partnership with the DC Theater Scene, an online publication, and its intention is to highlight not only the work of women and non-binary, when I say women, I mean cis and transgender women, and non-binary artists in the DC theater scene, but to also have them highlight some of the injustices that they've faced in the world and in the theater world in the hopes that we can get some change happening. And me personally, I'm really into the healing arts, whether you'd like to talk about manifestation goals, affirmations, whether you just want to communicate or keep in touch with the art and the series that I'm working on. You can visit my website at www.billiekrishawn, BILLIEKRISHAWN.com. And you can also visit my Patreon page where there are some kind of direct ways to receive some of those resources, and it's patreon.com with Billie Krishawn. And those are ways to keep connected. And my goal is always to partner with other Black and, in general, BIPOC, so Black, Indigenous, people of color that are women and non-binary specifically. So it's a great opportunity following me on any of those platforms to learn more about other artists who are doing the work. I would be grateful to start that loop of connection and healing.
Thank you so much for all the impact that you make and all the work that you do.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
Grateful.
And Amy, I know there's some incredible work, speaking of distance healing, and we even in this panel being able to present this in a distance-based way. I'm wondering if you could share, you're doing some really powerful service work for those, and would love for you to share that resource.
Yes, I'd like to share two things, two different strands. So first, if anyone would like to be able to experience the Tao calligraphy healing field, I'm just going to leave this up so that you remember those 4 words. You can look it up. There's centers in Toronto, San Francisco, and also I think Vancouver and Hawaii. So depending on what time zone you're in, you should be able to experience some of the free healing sessions that are being offered for people. And often you can become a demonstration person who volunteers to receive the healing blessing, or you can see what happens for other people as a very easy way to get started. And there's also research studies that are being done where they're asking people who are experiencing, people who have COVID or who are experiencing anxiety or whatever you have, and you'd like to receive the blessings. They want to be able to study before and after. And then for myself, as a healer, to be able to increase your power for giving the healing to others, I've primarily been a volunteer. I volunteer at Capital Caring Hospice, and there, while it's very rewarding to be able to support people with their physical pain, their trauma, whatever they're going through, so that they have the best quality of life for every moment they have left, that when this situation happened, I realized now with everyone being comfortable with the online, I wanted to be able to offer meditations, primarily to allow people to come in, try this out, and be able to get the relief they needed. And now I'm getting maybe 40 to 50 people signing up and then just joining me from wherever they are in the world. And as Billie said, it's so important for people to be able to learn to heal themselves that after joining this panel, it's like, okay, I've got to do this. And so now I'm going to start offering the Reiki lessons, or to be at the sessions where you can train to be a Reiki level 1, a Reiki level 2, and where you get the training you need to be able to do the self-healing or healing for others and the attunement. But primarily, I want people to be able to be empowered to heal themselves and their loved ones. And so on my website, which I'm trying to get everything updated, I also am going to offer for anyone who wants to do this without the certification, that I will offer free admission, so that people, especially now, people need to be empowered to heal themselves and to heal their loved ones, because often we can't even go to the doctor's office because everyone's, taking care of those who are in more need. That we think, oh, well, I'm stressed, I just have to deal with it. No, we need to find whatever mechanism we can, and if this is something people want to try, I want to empower people to do that. And my website is soulmindbodyalignment.org, and so it should be easy to remember. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for all of that work, of both providing and the training as well. I will also share that I actually have some tools and work to share with all of you as well, if I may. First, I wanted to recognize the support of my department, Global and Community Health at George Mason University, as well as the Center for the Advancement of Wellbeing, also at Mason, for allowing me to be here today. All opinions are my own, just have to put that out there. But I've been very blessed to work with public health scholars, including my graduate research assistant, Tori Mudd, who's here, whose help has helped us prepare for today. So I wanted to acknowledge her help. So thank you to her. But I want to kind of share that I'm blessed that after many, many years of being what I loosely call executive yoga coach, which only means that I've been honored to work one-on-one with admittedly thousands of yoga leaders with yoga in both one-on-one and class settings, and training yoga teachers all over the world. My work right now is really focused on how can we be creating digital health interventions that bring mind-body work to everyone without regard to issues of access. And so one way to go about that is to create interventions that are given either free or are funded by third parties, and to also test for efficacy and to really look at what kind of outcomes and what kind of impacts do we make. Now, the artist in me wants to tell you to just practice because it feels right and to trust your intuition, and I will continue to say that. But we also know that in order to, for national conversations like this to be had, and for national level and even global investment to happen, we need to be able to measure our outcomes. Back in 2013, I was honored to work with the Pan American and World Health Organization to raise awareness about sitting disease, and my work will continue to do that. So if you go to my website, which I'll share in a moment, you'll see that I actually have some online tools to teach you ways that you can take breaks with me during the day that I call Genius Breaks, and something I call the Mindful Movement Vitamin. It's a way to think about how you're moving during the day, and much like you take your multivitamin to make sure you're supplementing your food intake, that we need to think about how we're moving our bodies, especially in this technology-based world. But where I was going with that is I want to thank George Mason and the Center for the Advancement of Wellbeing, as well as the Department of Global and Community Health and our College of Health and Human Services for the support for being here. And I want you to try to stay in touch with me because we're very blessed that we have a few interventions coming out soon where we'll be able to give access to these mind-body practices in a digital environment. You'll be able to practice with us both synchronously and asynchronously, which is a fancy way of saying on your own pace or live versus Zoom, etc. And more importantly, to try to really find out how we can bring these mind-body practices to folks that have, frankly, maybe been prevented from practicing, whether it's because they're having to be more homebound these days, or even prior to that, because maybe they didn't find the yoga practices or other practices doable for them because maybe they have a physical or mental limitation. So how can we create access in terms of practices that are more adjusted for the physical and mental needs of the practitioners? And how can we also be delivering this work in a way that isn't based on financial investment? That said, I will kind of wrap up our day by asking all of you that are interested in the healing arts to give them the support they need, and that includes patronage as well. I think it's important for us to recognize that cultures throughout history have really been looked at years later and decades and generations later by the impact that the arts have made. And the reason why those arts have stood the test of time and gone through historical change like we're going through right now is because benefactors and supporters, be they agencies or individuals, have leaned in to be able to say that, you know what, in this time when there's so much for us to be thinking about and doing to make our world function, it's that much more important for us to be capturing the stories that we're going in, both so we can make sense of it now, but also to be able to tell that story over time. So it is not a luxury. If nothing else you take away today, I encourage you to recognize this is part of our mind-body connection within ourselves and with each other. And I encourage you to stay in touch with us. My website is drsusiecarmack.com, and I think my information is on the Mayhew website. But most importantly, I want you to continue to support the Mayhew Foundation. The national conversation we're having here is one that we need to have repeatedly so that we can have the change that we need to happen. Thanks for having me. Thank you. And us. And thank you to my panelists. Apologies for not thanking them as well. Thanks again to the Mayhew Foundation.